Hi, welcome to Gary's Urban Larder. Today I'm making bread pudding for you 3 ways. I've got a classic British bread and butter pudding with brandy-soaked sultanas, a Scandinavian inspired bread pudding made with stale baguettes, cardamom, cinnamon, and pearl sugar. And last but not least, a French-inspired bread pudding made with brioche, chocolate, and orange. Let's get started. I hope you really enjoy today because it's going to be a lot of fun for me, and it's very important to avoid food waste. And because my friend Misty wanted a recipe for bread pudding that would save her several dollars, tens of dollars of buying it in a grocery store, which I think is absolutely beyond the point. I wanted to show you how to do 3 different versions. So we're going to do a first traditional British bread and butter pudding, and I'll go over the ingredients in just a moment. Then we're going to do a more rustic version that's inspired by Scandinavian tradition, so it has some cardamom and cinnamon. And then we're going to do a more upscale version using some brioche and French-inspired orange and dark chocolate. So I'll go over the ingredients, but remember, and you should see it running along here, the bottom of the screen, that at my website, www.garysurbanlarder.com, you'll find a list of ingredients for each of the recipes and the full instructions. Okay, so starting with bread and butter pudding. So we've got some stale bread, and this is the point. It was to avoid waste. And if you were from a poor family, you couldn't afford to waste anything. So find a way to use up the stale bread. So we're going to butter that. We've got some softened butter, which is going to go on both the traditional British version and our French-inspired version. Sugar, cinnamon, and I have some raisins that I've soaked overnight in brandy. Actually, they're sultanas, or you could think of them as golden raisins in the US. So you don't have to soak them in alcohol. You could use just water and just soak them overnight so they plump up a bit. Okay, and then for this version, this is very stale French baguette, which we're going to use for our Scandinavian-inspired version of bread pudding, which we have cardamom and cinnamon, and we've got pearl sugar, which is going to go on the top. We have sugar in all of them. We're going to do a custard for each of them. So the custard is going to basically remain the same. Eggs, sugar, milk. The only difference is on this version, because this is really stale, we're going to do a warm custard to pour over it and let it stand. All of these, the custard has to stand and soak in. And finally, the French-inspired had some brioche, and we have some dark chocolate. This is 85% cocoa. I have orange, which we're going to use the zest and the juice, and we have some vanilla and sugar. And of course, we have our eggs. All right, so we'll start with the first one. So the first thing I want to do is just cut my bread into triangles. And I'll start off with 6 slices, and I think I have at least 6 more. Now, you don't have to remove the crust. If you don't like the crusts, or for aesthetic reasons you want to remove them, do so. So I'm just using a bread knife, and I'm just taking that serrated edge through on the diagonal. I'm not forcing it. We don't want to crush the bread. And there we have our triangles. So I'm just going to do 6 more. That's exactly how many I have. How lucky is that? You would think that I planned it. So, and we'll just, again on the diagonal, take our bread knife, just not much pressure, just letting the knife do the work. Cut it into our triangles. And there we have it. I'm going to set half of these aside. We will start buttering our triangles. So there, gives you a better viewpoint, I hope. So I'm just taking our softened butter and I'm just spreading generously each triangle of bread. So once I have them all buttered, I'm going to sprinkle over the sugar and the cinnamon. So this is such a simple recipe. Please, please, please do not go to some supermarket or store or shop to buy some kind of kit to make bread pudding. It is so easy. It's done out of being resourceful and frugal. And that's the best thing. And I know a lot of you will have some childhood memories of bread pudding. So I'm just going to then sprinkle this liberally, generously with sugar. And then I have, to help me, a little strainer, a little sieve, which I'm going to use in order to dust it with the cinnamon. Now, I like to do this method. Some people may prefer to line them in the casserole or the dish they're going to bake them in and then sprinkle it over top. And that's fine. So I do have a casserole that I'm going to line these in and just going to overlap them. And this has been buttered. This dish has been buttered and sugared and ready to receive our bread. So I'm just going to finish buttering, sugaring, and putting cinnamon on the rest of those. And when I get to a point where I've got my first layer in, I'll show you, we'll add the raisins or the sultanas. Okay? Here's where we started before. I continue to just layer these in, and they can be snug. That is a very good thing. So once I have the triangles in our dish, arranged as I want them, can you see that? So now I'm going to take some of our soaked raisins and just sprinkle those in. Now, if you don't like cooked raisins, and a lot of people don't, then you can omit them or you could add something else, maybe pecans or some other nut. Okay, so I will finish getting this layered and then I'll show you how we'll make the custard. What I wanted you to know is for the second layer, we're going to do our triangles the opposite way across the top. And this is going to give us lots of little nooks and crannies for the custard to go in between the bread. And this will be really rich and beautiful. And yeah, I hope you can see how simple this really is. So I'll just finish this up. Okay, I'm just adding the rest of our soaked raisins, brandy soaked raisins. We've got our bread in. Don't worry about arranging it too perfectly. Just something that's attractive, something that you like. So, okay, now we come on to just making our simple custard. And it really is just that. I'm using 3 whole eggs. 1, 2, 3. I'll take my whisk and I just want to start to beat those, break them up. And into these, I'm going to add my sugar. And I'm just going to continue to whisk that until that's well combined. And it begins to lighten in color. Use up all that sugar. This is a very rich dessert. Now, this recipe has very humble beginnings. So you don't have to use a lot of sugar. You sprinkle quite a bit on the bread, and you can just add a little bit to the custard. I like it very rich, so I've added more sugar. But again, to your taste. Now I'm going to slowly add in our milk to the egg and sugar mixture, just continuing to beat that together. I've got about 1.5 cups of milk here. There we are. Now all we're going to do is just to pour that egg and milk mixture over our bread. And we're going to take our clean hands and we just want to push that down into that custard mixture, because we want the bread to soak up all of that moisture and egg. So, and we need to let this do that job of soaking it up for about an hour. So while this is soaking, we'll move on to the next one. For the next recipe, the Scandinavian inspired bread pudding, we're going to actually warm through our milk when we make our custard. So to the milk, I'm going to add our sugar, some vanilla, cardamom, and cinnamon, about 1 teaspoon each. Now I'm just going to whisk that to combine. Then I'll put it on a low heat and scald the milk just before boiling. And we're going to then soak this very, very stale bread in that warm custard mixture. And we're going to drizzle some melted butter over it before we add it to our dish. We've scalded our milk together with the spices, and before we add it to the eggs, I just want to break those up. And what we're going to do is something called tempering the eggs. You want to do this every time you make a custard, because otherwise you will end up with scrambled eggs. So we're just going to add a little at a time to temper these eggs. And I have some butter melting for the top, which you can hear. So once we have those tempered, I'm going to add that to our milk and spice mixture. And then the entirety of it goes over our bread. our very stale baguette. Okay. And then I'm going to pour over melted butter. So, and this also has to soak, and we want to make sure we get all of that bread down into our custard and soak it up. So now we have the second recipe prepared, and we're just going to let that soak while we get the third ready, the French-inspired brioche. Ready for bread pudding number 3, our French-inspired version. Now, I'm not going to cut the brioche bread, but we're going to do a similar process as we did with the traditional. Because the brioche has quite a bit of butter already, I'm not as generous when I'm spreading it. So this really doesn't get any easier. So that's really it. And we're going to finish buttering all of these. And then we're going to just arrange them in our dish. So let me get that finished. Get all our slices done. Got an extra slice here. Lucky us. And then we'll add our bits of chocolate and our orange and make our custard. It's really, really simple. As before, we've buttered our dish, and I'm just going to sugar it before adding in our bread. And I'm just going to sugar each one gently, lightly, and I'm just going to turn them sort of opposite on themselves as I put them in. If they break up a little bit, that's okay. It's going to be broken up in the end anyway. So we get those arranged in our dish. As beautifully as we can. This is our fancy bread pudding. And got the last one that we sugar. Just going to push that into our dish. Now, chocolate. This is the dark chocolate, which we're just going to scatter between our pieces. Don't be afraid to lift it up and get it in there. That one tried to get away. There's no getting away from this. This is going to be a wonderful, rich dessert. I've got about 80 grams of the dark chocolate. Get some behind there as well. And yeah, why not? We'll just do all of that. Okay, and we've got our orange, which I'm just going to give a quick roll before zesting it. And we just want the zest. Oh, already it smells amazing. That wonderful scent of orange. We just want to get that all over our dish. And don't worry too much, because we're going to add more zest to finish it. So There we have the zest from our orange, and the fragrance already is beautiful. So we just want to finish with the custard. Again, this is a very simple one. Just 3 eggs. Got a bit of shell. And the best way to get rid of shell that's fallen into something is to use another bit of shell. So why not be decadent? We're going to do 4 eggs on this one. Why not? Those were kind of small. So we've got 4 eggs. Just going to give them a light beat, a light whiskey. Just going to give these eggs a light whiskey, maybe a beating too if they don't behave. And we'll add in our sugar. All of our sugar. Get that well combined before we add in the milk. Get about 1.5 cups of milk. A little more if you like it, and this might take a bit more. And once that's combined, we're going to just pour that over our brioche. Try to get it over each slice and not on the counter. And again, we want to just give this a little push gently into that custard so that, I'm going to move some of this chocolate, so that it can soak it up. So there's the third one. We're going to give this an hour to soak up our custard. We'll heat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 180 Celsius, and we'll put each of these in for around 30 to 40 minutes. We'll see how they get on. All right, join me in just a bit for bread pudding. I have to find someone to give these to. I'm not going to be able to eat all these bread pudding. All right, okay, stick with me. Our oven has come up to temperature, so in goes number 1, our very classic British bread and butter pudding. And that is going to bake in the oven for 30 to 40 minutes, maybe a little longer. We'll check on it. Do you know what time it is? It's time to take our remaining bread puddings out of the oven. So here they are. Our French-inspired brioche, chocolate, and orange bread pudding, and our more rustic Swedish-inspired bread pudding with cinnamon and cardamom and pearl sugar. Don't these look amazing? And they smell even better than they look. And I'm going to add some more powdered sugar across our traditional British pudding. Can never have too much powdered sugar. There we go. And maybe a bit of the pearl sugar across the Swedish-inspired or the Scandinavian-inspired bread pudding. And there's nothing more to add to our French-inspired bread pudding except a glaze made with icing sugar and some of the juice of half of the lemon. So I'm just going to whisk this together while these cool. And it's really, it couldn't be simpler, right? just a little bit of the juice from the orange. And we have our glaze. So, still a bit hot. I'm going to let these cool as well. And then we'll plate them up. And I get to taste each one. What am I going to do with all these bread puddings? Who's going to come and help me? Anybody? Well, I'm glad you've made it this far. Please leave me your comments and any questions you might have while these are cooling. I will come back to you. I really like getting questions. And Misty, I hope you've made it this far and you have lots of ideas for inexpensive bread pudding that you can make with whatever you have on hand. Avoid waste. That's what it's all about. So, as I say, I'm going to let these cool just a bit and then we'll tuck in. So we have our 3 bread puddings all ready for the tasting. So again, I want to thank Misty for asking the question recently about recipes for bread puddings. I hope I've shown you that it's a really simple thing to do. You don't have to spend a lot of money. The purpose of it is to be resourceful and frugal. So it's time to have a taste. I've got the classic British style bread pudding, a bread and butter pudding, and it's sitting in some cream. So, and it does smell absolutely fantastic. The flavor of the cinnamon comes through. I don't really get any of the alcohol from the brandy soaked sultanas. It's delightful, buttery, light, soft, crunchy on the edges. Now let's try the Scandinavian inspired one. And I'm serving this with creme fraiche. You could use sour cream if you prefer, but I'm looking forward to this. That combination of cinnamon and the cardamom is beautiful. And you wouldn't have thought, you saw how stale the baguette was. Just goes to show you, do not throw away stale bread. Make bread pudding instead. And finally, the brioche. The French-inspired, oh, I nearly forgot. So I'm just going to add a bit of orange zest because you can never have too much orange flavor on this. So it's from the chocolate. Oh, the smell of orange, really wonderful. That too, with the orange glaze, it's really rich. It is delicious. I can't decide which is my favorite. Whether it's this now cream-soaked, traditional British bread and butter pudding, it's truly a classic. Try the cardamom and cinnamon one again. That's definitely the least sweet of the 3. And by far, the brioche with the chocolate and the orange is the sweetest. Okay, I've made a decision. I can't choose. Why don't you let me know in the comments which you think would be your favorite? Well, thank you for joining me today. I'm Gary's Urban Larder. I hope you enjoy this trio of bread puddings. If you have, please give us a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single delicious recipe. And please share this with your friends and help me build this community. Well, until next time, I've got a lot of bread pudding. Bye-bye.
Mm.